ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Succinct Psychology, aka Succinct. My name is Jaia Hendrickson, and this video is going to be a continuation of my two previous videos covering Chapter 7 in Principles of Social Psychology, looking at influencing and conforming. So, one type of person who has power over others, in the sense that they're able to influence them, are leaders. And leaders are in a position in which they can exert leadership, which is the ability to direct and inspire others to achieve goals. Leaders have many different forms of techniques at their disposal for influencing. In some cases, they may give commands and enforce them with reward or coercive power, and this results in public conformity with those commands. In other cases, they may rely on well-reasoned technical arguments or inspirational appeals, which make use of legitimate, referent, or expert power. And this is with the goal of creating private acceptance and leading their followers to achieve goals as well. Now, one approach to understanding leadership is to focus on person variables. Personality theories of leadership are explanations of leadership based on the idea that some people are simply natural leaders, because they possess characteristics that make them effective. Now, because so many characteristics seem to be related to leader skills, some researchers have attempted to account for leadership not in terms of individual traits, but in terms of a package of traits that successful leaders seem to have. And some have considered this in terms of charisma. Charismatic leaders are leaders who are enthusiastic, committed, and self-confident. They tend to talk about the importance of group goals on a broad level, and they tend to make self-sacrifices for the group. Charismatic leaders express views that support and validate existing group norms, but they also contain a vision of what the group could or should be. Charismatic leaders use their referent power to motivate, uplift, and inspire others. And research has found a positive relationship between a leader's charisma and effective leadership performance. Another trait-based approach to leadership is based on the idea that leaders take either transactional or transformational leadership styles with their subordinates. Transactional leaders are more regular leaders who work with their subordinates to help them understand what's required of them and to get the job done. Transformational leaders, on the other hand, are more like charismatic leaders. They have a vision of where the group is going, and they attempt to stimulate and inspire their workers to move beyond their present status and to create a new and better future. And so, transformational leaders are those who can reconfigure and transform the group's norms. Despite the fact that there appear to be at least some personality traits that relate to leadership ability, the most important approaches to understanding leadership take into consideration both personality characteristics of the leader and the situation in which the leader is operating. One well-known person-situation approach to understanding leadership effectiveness was developed by Fred Fiedler and his colleagues. The contingency model of leadership effectiveness is a model of leadership effectiveness that focuses on both person variables and situational variables. Fiedler conceptualized the leadership style of the individual as a relatively stable personality variable and measured it by having people consider all the people that they had ever worked with and describe the person that they had least liked to work with, or their least preferred coworker. Those who indicated that they only somewhat disliked their least preferred coworker are relationship-oriented type people. They're motivated to have close personal relationships with others. However, those who indicated that they did not like this coworker very much were classified as task-oriented people who were primarily motivated to get the job done. And in addition to classifying individuals according to their leadership styles, Fiedler also classified the situations in which the groups had to perform their task, both on the basis of the task itself and on the basis of the leader's relationship to the group members. Specifically, Fiedler thought that there were three aspects of the group situations that were important. The first was the degree to which the leader already had a good relationship with the group members and the support of the group members. which was leader-member relations. Second was the extent to which the task is structured and unambiguous, or task structure. And third and final was the leader's level of power and support in the organization, or position power. Furthermore, Fiedler believed that these factors were ordered in terms of their importance, such that leader and member relationship was more important than task structure, which was in turn more important than position power. So as a result, he was able to create 8 levels of situational favorableness. This was of the group situation, which roughly ranged from most favorable to least favorable for the leader. The most favorable relationship involves good relationships, structured tasks, and strong power for the leader, whereas the least favorable relationship involves poor relationships, and unstructured tasks, and weak leader power. Now, the contingency model is interactionist because it proposes that individuals with different leadership styles will differ in terms of their effectiveness in different group situations. Task-oriented leaders are expected to be most effective in situations in which the group situation is very favorable because this gives the leader the ability to move the group forward, or in situations in which the group situation is very unfavorable and in which the extreme problems of the situation require the leader to engage in decisive action. However, in the situations of moderate favorableness, which occurred when there was a lack of support for the leader or when there was a problem that was very difficult or unclear to solve, the more relationship-oriented leader was expected to be more effective. And so in short, the contingency model predicts that task-oriented leaders will be most effective either when the group climate is very favorable, so there's no need to worry about the feelings of the group members, or when the group climate is very unfavorable and the task-oriented leader needs to take firm control. And so we see here in this figure above, we have on the left end of the yellow bar a favorable situational control, and that's where the task leader is first most effective. And so we have things such as good leader-member relations, we have a structured task structure, and then we have strong leader's position of power. And then we move towards the middle of the yellow bar, and we have where the relationship leader is most effective. And there you might have a good member-leader relationship, maybe an unstructured task, and a strong leader's position. Or you might have a good leader's-member relation, a structured task, and a weak leader's position. And then we move to the other end of the yellow bar, where it's the unfavorable situational control, and we see again that the task leader is most effective. And this is where we'll have bad leader-member relations, unstructured task structure, and a weak leader's position of power. Even in cases in which the pressure to conform is strong and a large percentage of individuals do conform, such as in Solomon Ash's line judging research, not everyone does so. There are usually some people who are willing and able to go against the prevailing norm. In Ash's study, for instance, despite the strong situational pressure, 24% of the participants didn't conform on any of the trials. People prefer to have an optimal balance between being similar to and different from others. When people are made to feel too similar to others, they tend to express their individuality. But when people are made to feel too different from others, they tend to attempt to increase their understanding of others. And so, supporting this idea, research has found that people have lower self-esteem and are more likely to conform in comparison with those who have higher self-esteem. And this makes sense because self-esteem rises when we know we are being accepted by others, and people with lower self-esteem have a greater need to belong. Age also matters, such that individuals who are either older or younger are more easily influenced than individuals who are in their 40s and 50s. And people who highly identify with the groups that are creating the conformity are also more likely to conform to the group's norms. And that's in comparison to people who don't really care very much. However, although there are some differences among people in terms of their tendency to conform, it's even been suggested that some people have a need for uniqueness that leads them to be particularly likely to resist conformity. Research has generally found that the impact of person variables on conformity is smaller than the influence of situational variables, such as the numbers and the unanimity of the majority. Several reviews and meta-analyses of the existing research on conformity and leadership in men and women have now been conducted, and so it is possible to draw some strong conclusions in this regard. In terms of conformity, the overall conclusion from these studies is that there are only small differences between men and women in the amount of conformity they exhibit, and these differences are influenced as much by the social situation in which the conformity occurs as by the gender differences themselves. On average, men and women have different levels of self-concern and other concern. Men are, on average, more concerned about appearing to have high status and may be able to demonstrate this status by acting independently from the opinions of others. On the other hand, and again, although there are substantial individual differences among them, women are, on average, more concerned with connecting to others and maintaining group harmony. And so taken together, this means that, at least when they're being observed by others, men are likely to hold their ground, act independently, and refuse to conform, whereas women are more likely to conform to the opinions of others in order to prevent social disagreement. But these differences are less apparent when the conformity occurs in private. In addition to gender differences, there's also evidence that conformity is greater in some cultures than others. Your knowledge about cultural differences between individualistic and collectivist cultures probably leads you to believe that collectivists will be more conforming than individualists, and there is some support for this. Bond and Smith in 1996 analyzed the results of 133 studies that had used Ash's line judging tasks in 17 different countries. They then categorized each of these countries in terms of the degree to which they could be considered individualistic or collectivist in orientation. And they found a significant relationship, such that conformity was greater in more collectivist than individualistic countries. And further, Kim and Marcus in 1999 analyzed advertisements from popular magazines in the United States and in Korea to see if there was differentially emphasized conformity and uniqueness. And as you can see in the figure above, they found that while the US magazine ads tended to focus on uniqueness, so things such as choose your own view and individualize, the Korean ads tended to focus more on themes of conformity. So things such as 7 out of 10 people use these products, and our company is working toward making a more harmonious society. So we see here in this graph, we have Korea first, the purple bar representing uniqueness, and the orange bar representing conformity. And as you can see, the purple bar is much lower than the orange bar in Korea for uniqueness to conformity. And then in the United States, we have the unique bar being higher than the conformity bar. And so, in summary, although the effects of individual differences on conformity tend to be smaller than those of the social context, they do matter. And gender and cultural differences can also be important. So conformity, like most other social psychological processes, represents an interaction between the situation and the person. Alright folks, this is going to conclude my third and final video covering Chapter 7 in Principles of Social Psychology, looking at influencing and conforming. Some of the topics we looked at were many varieties of conformity, obedience, power, and leadership, and finally, person, gender, and cultural differences in conformity. I hope you guys learned some stuff, and I'll see you guys next time.